Hello, I'm back on the other side. Thank you so much, Mike. It was such a great honor to hear big ideas and big concepts together. Ladies and gentlemen, the World Economic Forum says that by 2050, almost 70% of the world's population will live in smart cities. Our next speaker is inviting all of us to actively engage and discuss on what we need to do to realize the vision of Malaysia's smart city framework. But to understand smart cities is to secure smart cities. Ladies and gentlemen, here is David Rajoo, Palo Alto's Systems Engineering Head of Cybersecurity Engineering for Malaysia.
Thank you so much for coming for this keynote session. My name is David Rajoo. I'm currently the Country SE Head for Palo Alto Networks Malaysia. I've been in cybersecurity for the past 15 years, and every day has been an exciting journey. And what's most interesting is, together with my team and I, we wake up every day, right, trying to figure out in terms of solving some of cybersecurity's hardest challenges. And securing Malaysia's smart city is no different from that, right? Or as I would like to call it, how not to set Malaysia's smart city on fire. So let's get into the discussion itself, right? So firstly, I think when I was kind of researching about smart cities, what really was interesting about it was that there was no real official definition of smart cities, right? It's only coming from academia in terms of what smart city is. So these are all, it came up as early as even 1999, trying to define what smart cities are like. But thankfully, right, for Malaysia, we have a smart city. So this is actually shown, and you can actually get this from the Malaysian Smart City Framework. And here's a quick definition of it, right? Cities that uses ICT and technological advancement to address urban issues, including improving our quality of life, promote economic growth, develop sustainable and safe environment, and of course, encourage efficient urban management practices. So that's actually what's mentioned in the KPKT's website around the Malaysian Smart City framework itself in 2018. So a deeper dive in terms of what that looks like. And if you look at the Malaysia Smart City, it consists of basically 7 components in it, cutting across 16 cross-cutting policies with 36 strategies around it, and then all coming around with indicators in terms of how we're actually measuring the impact of a smart city implementation. And this gives you a view in terms of, again, that 7 smart city components. And you can see definitely one of them is smart digital infrastructure. And then it talks about enhancing enhanced personal data protection and cybersecurity measures, right? Smart cities, the components has got a lot of topics, a lot of components to it. And it's a session I am looking forward to have with my panelists around this, particularly around cybersecurity, right? And if you look at the framework itself, policy number 5, right? Cybersecurity shall be strengthened in a smart city context, Malaysia Smart City Framework 2018. So that's well and good. Thankfully, our government the ministry has looked into what a Malaysian smart city would look like, and putting into context what are all the components that's relevant to Malaysia itself, right? Now, if I flip the view a little bit to a global perspective, now if I zoom out from a national or country perspective from Malaysia, I zoom it out to an example of using World Economic Forum. Now, I apologize if this is a bit hard for you to see, but what you can do is you can go on into the World Economic Forum and look at this interesting visualization, right? They have this around this digital transformations of city and urbanization. And all the topics that are related to cities and urbanizations, the challenges, the benefits are out of it, right? And one of the components out of that from WEF's perspective is urban resilience. And the visualization then further breaks it down into, of course, the components around cybersecurity, right? And what are the challenges that we are looking at from a cybersecurity perspective when it comes to implementing smart cities. So here, and this is where I like to kind of change the conversation a little bit, right? Our panel and I, we're going to talk about all the benefits around smart city, but I want to take this opportunity to look at smart cities, right? And our world is changing for all obvious reasons that you and I are currently facing and experiencing right now. But from a cybersecurity perspective, I wanted to kind of draw your attention to really three things around smart cities and what those challenges are, right? Namely around IoT, around cloud transformation, and how 5G has a big impact in terms of implementing smart cities and making sure smart cities are successful in that sense. So I like to draw upon all these reports from our own Palo Alto Networks Unit 42, the various threat reports that we've released in 2020, and give you a sense in terms of what are the challenges and what are the cybersecurity issues, right, to look at from when it comes to smart city. The framework itself, the paper itself, has its view in terms of where cybersecurity looks at, but I would like to kind of add on and perhaps take this opportunity to enhance that particular framework with some of the data points that we are getting from this report itself. So three things I'm going to talk about. The first one really is around Internet of Things, right? Now, if you look at any smart city research, even our very own one and the global ones, IoT underpins a lot of that capability to mature from a traditional analog city to a smart city, right? And you can see here, right, some of the data points around here, 1.1 trillion market. It's a 1.1 trillion market by 2026, 41.6 billion connected devices by 2025. Now, just to give you a bit of context around that, by 2025, we are expecting the human population to be at about 8 billion. So if you think about it, 8 billion compared to 41.6 billion of connected devices by 2025, that is about what, one human person to about 8 devices, right? But if you think about it, you and I probably have got a lot more connected devices, in currently at present. So I think this number will definitely need to revisit it, right? But nonetheless, right? And when you look at budgets and all that, today itself, a lot of decision makers that we are in conversation with some of the largest organizations here in Malaysia, that they are looking at IoT and they have budgets to implement IoT projects. Now, if you flip that around to, I guess, the other side of the coin, if you think about IoT, this is taken directly out from our Unit 42 IoT threat report, right, in 2020. 98%, almost all the IoT devices that we've seen on our report are unencrypted. That means traffic is going in the clear. Anyone snooping on the traffic, looking onto the network itself, will be able to see what the traffic is all about. Now, what's more scary, of course, is, or what's more concerning, is that the number of attacks, a large amount of attacks, are very common, and they exist on these IoT devices. And almost half, or a little bit more than half, right? 57% of all IoT devices that we've seen in the report are highly vulnerable. Now, if I break that down a little bit more, you can see again, right? The same 41% is more technical in nature in terms of how we basically compromise the IoT device in a smart city implementation, right? But a good percentage, 26% of it comes down to just user practices, weak user default password configurations on those IoT devices, or the traditional social engineering attack falling to a phishing attack, right, on the user's end itself. That those, if you take them together, takes up almost 3/4 of the attacks that we are seeing on IoT devices. So this is really important to kind of drive home the point, to make sure that IoT, when you look again, when I say IoT, when you look at smart city implementations, it's going to be critical component in that, right? And making sure that these IoT devices are secure from day one, when they get implemented, and figuring out a way to also keep it secure once it's out in the real world, is a important part of having a stable and secure smart city infrastructure itself. Now, so that's on the IoT side of things. Now, when the other big part of this is around with cloud, right? Given this pandemic, we've had conversations with CIOs, CISOs to say that how cloud has made them the digital rock stars of their organizations. That's because for those companies that has been able to very quickly pivot to digital, they've been seen as the rock stars, right? While COVID was the digital chief transformation officer, it also made the CISO, again, right, digital rock stars. But I think with that, there is a lot of security challenges that comes along with this whole big rush to cloud. Now, why cloud, right? And it ties very closely to IoT, because the amount of data and telemetry that the IoT devices are generating, you need a system that is able to scale, that's elastic, that is highly resilient in nature, to be able to now consume that amount of telemetry coming into the environment. And the cloud platform gives you all that. But what we've seen with that is that, a lot of insecure configurations, and we've seen in the past already major breaches that has happened in the cloud particularly, is not because of some technical vulnerability. It was because the user has misconfigured a particular configuration on the cloud provider, cloud platform itself, right? So things like insecure configurations, host vulnerabilities, when the software that's being developed for the cloud was not developed securely and it's been pushed out to the cloud, that's where a lot of that security challenges of vulnerabilities are now getting baked in right at the coding lifecycle itself, right? So that's the second part of where we see some challenges around smart cities, right? IoT is one, and then this whole moving to cloud is another one as well. So now, then when you put this on top, and you're probably wondering where 5G comes in, and if you read, the Malaysian smart city framework as well, no different, right? They actually very specifically mentioned that 5G was a big driver to realize a lot of the capabilities or implementations around smart cities. What's interesting about 4G, this whole shift from 4G to 5G, I've learned is that the shift is going to be away from the consumer, that means you and I. Think about it, right? 4G is very targeted towards the consumer, you and I, having just literally fast access to the internet. But when 5G happens, it's going to be very industry specific. The use case is not going to be you and I as the consumer. The use case is going to be the industries that will be using 5G as its capabilities to roll out, IoT devices that's running over a 5G network that has got ultra low low latency, right? You want to use that in utility or in fleet management. Can you imagine in healthcare having IoT devices in there, or even an energy? Your smart meters will potentially be even running over a 5G network, possibly, right? To be able to figure out what's happening, how much electricity you're consuming, or even down to water management that uses 5G to kind of have IoT sensors, kind of remote sense its environment. So 5G will drive this future of Industry 4.0. Now, what will happen is that IoT and cloud, it already has got a lot of that security functionalities in there. Now imagine you put IoT now on top of 5G, all right? What that means is that billions of IoT now suddenly has got 5G speeds, means your attack surface now suddenly and became wider by leaps and bounds. Again, right, the same 41.6 billion devices are estimated to be connected. Now, some of the issues around this with 5G security concerns when it comes to IoT will be things like we've seen crypto mining capabilities, right? So now that you've got small little compute capability on IoT devices, now imagine a hacker being able to take over an IoT device and run crypto mining capabilities. That has huge impact on your IoT devices, right? Because the performance of the device, from its battery to CPU utilization, will be severely impacted, because all these are very processor intensive when you're running crypto mining capabilities on an IoT device. Can you imagine that, right? Or ransomware running amok on IoT devices, or as we've seen in the previous attacks on IoT, in the Mirai botnet attack, was that CCTVs around the world was kind of taken over, and they basically distributed denial of service or a DDoS against very popular streaming sites itself that took down a large percentage of the internet. So 5G is just going to make that speed a whole lot faster around when it comes to IoT. Now, cloud is another thing, right? End-to-end standalone cloud. So think about 5G not only from what you and I know from a traditional mobile operator, but 5G today potentially can even be run standalone, right, without a mobile operator. And a lot of these technologies, 5G technologies, will run cloud native. So things like containers, serverless technologies, and all that will need to be able to run on that. So the challenge and the report that I've mentioned about cloud, definitely plays into 5G security concerns here. And of course, around new 5G services, right? When you're thinking about 5G services, it's again not about you and I as a consumer, but really industrial vertical demands. And you can see here, right? From fixed broadband to healthcare to energy to connected cars, they all have got very, very different security requirements. Of course, right, you have the differentiated services from a 5G perspective, from a connected car to energy to healthcare. They all have different unique value propositions. So must security come in, right? Security needs to be seen as a differentiator to be able to secure all these different 5G services across this different vertical industry applications that's going to sit on 5G services, right? And to be able to now embed security in is going to be not only a differentiator, but really critical to any successful smart city implementation itself. Now, all the doom and gloom, all the scary stuff around security, but those are the realities, right? Those are realities that we're already seeing today as seen from our threat report. But what are we doing about it, right? So really to be able to now be confident in terms of smart city implementation, one of the biggest things like leaders, when thinking about smart cities, and I urge, and this is a discussion I love to have, is to think about visibility, right? You can't protect what you can't see, literally. So having that visibility across a complex, not even security architecture, right? A complex smart city digital infrastructure, where does security fit in, and that having that visibility from a security point of view is going to be very critical. Now, because of the scale of smart city, because of all the IoT devices that's coming in, all the sensors that's coming in, intelligence with automation is going to be critical here, right? The ability to now always have constant feedback loops to make sure that we are saving times and embedding security as early as possible in the development lifecycle, right? So think about it as security as no longer going to be something that's bolted on after the fact, right? I said I've been in security for 15 years. I think traditionally that has always been the mentality that I develop the application, then only think about security. But we're given in today's world with 5G, with smart city, with the way technology is even implemented and developed, you need to have security built right from the start itself. And that's where intelligence comes in, and the ability to now have that feedback loop to be able to stop the attacks, right? And last but not least is simplicity and flexibility. I've been in this industry long enough to see how it has now shifted. Security used to be something organizations think about, that I just need to secure my network around my organization and that's it, right? But as you and I know very well, that today's environment runs all over the place, right? Across all enterprises, cloud, and even hybrid environments. So being able to re-look at your security architecture and reimagine how that security architecture looks like. For a start, rethinking in terms of how security products are actually deployed in your organization today. We've seen as much as organizations having 25 different security products deployed today. That's unheard of, right? You've never heard of 25 different CRM systems deployed in an organization today. But security, that's the case, right? It's and I've been talking to a lot of leaders, is that we see a big stack of security, all trying to fix a particular point problem in security, and that's where all that complexity really comes in as well. So again, the main point around security is that in the past, security has been reactive. We need to really change that game, especially with smart cities. we need to be able to stay ahead of the threats rather than just reacting to security itself. And last but not least, right, when it comes to smart security, with smart cities, we want to look at it from this perspective, right? From how are we securing users, the citizens, interacting with the application of that smart city, that they are exchanging their data on the network that the smart city is providing across the IoT devices that is sensing or interacting with its environment, right? So to be able to kind of secure all that, across and give context across any time of the day, across any location, doesn't matter if it's on premise, on your smarts, your street lights, or all the way up to the cloud itself. So in summary, I think we really need to ensure that we do not set fire to Malaysia's smart city, right? And I look forward to a lively discussion and learning with my fellow panelists and the audience itself. Thank you.